We got a marvelously large crowd this afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I'm sure if somebody does a head count, you'll find it's more than the 300 people that heard the Declaration of Independence read on July 8th, 1776 in Philadelphia. Today is I was going to say happy birthday to you all to begin. It's happy birthday to Calvin Coolidge. He was the only president who was born on the 4th of July and has a special affiliation with Massachusetts because of his position in Boston and then his settling in his retirement in Northampton, where his papers are now housed. But more importantly, it's also the death date of 3 of the 5 first presidents of the United States, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, who were both members of the committee, Jefferson being the principal writer, but both members of the committee who drafted the Declaration of Independence, and James Monroe, who was one of the principal participants in the Virginia ratification of the Constitution in 1788 in a series of remarkable debates that took place in the Virginia legislature for the ratification of it. But this afternoon we have, as reader number 1 for the Declaration of Independence, Finn Wittrock, who has played in The Death of the Salesman on Broadway and is now appearing in Blue Deep on the Nikos stage. And as reader number 2, Heather Lind, who also is in Blue Deep on the Nikos stage, and with the onerous job of giving the British reply, Lewis Black, who isn't actively employed here at the theater festival at the moment, but who lends his presence to all productions, I suppose, and is gracing our afternoon with the reply of the commissioners, the King's commissioners, on September 19th, and that of George III to the joint houses of Parliament on October 31st, 1776. So thank you.
I'm going to do this way? Yeah. It works. Okay. This way? When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government, The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world.
He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within.
He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures.
He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within.
He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers.
He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance.
He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power.
He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever.
He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation.
He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions.
In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people.
Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that, as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Wah, wah, wah. Although the Congress, whom the misguided Americans suffer to direct their opposition to a reestablishment of the constitutional government of these provinces, have disavowed every purpose of reconciliation not consonant with their extravagant and inadmissible claim of independency, the King's Commissioner think fit to declare that they are equally desirous to confer with His Majesty's well-affected subjects upon the means of restoring the public tranquility and establishing a permanent union with every colony as a part of the British Empire. Oh, you sad little people. The king, being most graciously disposed to direct a revision of such of his royal instructions as may be construed to lay an improper restraint upon the freedom of legislation in any of his colonies, and to concur in the revisal of all acts by which his subjects there may think themselves aggrieved, it is recommended to the inhabitants at large to reflect seriously upon their present condition and expectations, and to judge for themselves whether it be more consistent with their honor and happiness to offer up their lives as a sacrifice to the unjust and precarious cause in which they are engaged, or, listen well, to return to their allegiance, accept the blessings of peace, and be secured in a free enjoyment of their liberty and properties upon the true principles of the Constitution. That's all you got. That's all you got. Wow. Wow. No. Sad. No, don't try it, kid. Yells at a 6-year-old. His Majesty's, now this is, His Majesty now speaks. My lords and gentlemen, nothing could have afforded me so much satisfaction as to have been able to inform you at the opening of this session that the troubles which have so long distracted my colonies in North America were at an end, and that my unhappy people recovered from their delusion, had delivered themselves from the oppression of their leaders and returned to their duty. But so daring and desperate is the spirit of those leaders, whose object has always been dominion and power, that they have now openly renounced all allegiance to the crown and all political connection with this country. They have rejected, with circumstances of indignity and insult, the means of conciliation held out to them under the authority of our commission, and have presumed to set up their rebellious confederacies for independent states. If their treason be suffered to take root, much mischief must grow from it, to the safety of my loyal colonies, to the commerce of my kingdoms, and indeed to the present system of all Europe. See what you're doing? One great advantage, however, will be derived from the object of the rebels being openly avowed and clearly understood. We shall have unanimity at home, founded in the general conviction of the justice and necessity of our measures. I am happy to inform you that by the blessings of divine providence on the good conduct and valor of my officers and forces by sea and land, and on zeal and bravery of the auxiliary troops in my service, Canada is recovered. Oh yeah, really? Their money's worth more than ours now, folks. I've been waiting all day to say that. And although from unavoidable delays, the operations at New York could not begin before the month of August, the success in that province has been so important as to give the strongest hopes of the most decisive good consequences. But notwithstanding this fair prospect, we must at all events prepare for another campaign. I continue to receive assurances of amity from the several courts of Europe, and am using my utmost endeavors to conciliate unhappy differences between two neighboring powers, and I still hope that all misunderstandings may be removed and Europe continue to enjoy the inestimable blessings of peace. I think, nevertheless, that in the present situation of affairs, it is expedient that we should be in a respectable state of defense at home. Gentlemen of the House of Commons, I will order the estimates for the ensuing year to be laid before you. It is a matter of real concern to me that the important considerations which I have stated to you must necessarily be followed by great expense. I doubt not, however, but that my faithful Commons will readily and cheerfully grant me such supplies as the maintenance of the honor of the Crown, the vindication of the just rights of Parliament, and the public welfare shall be found to require. My lords and gentlemen, in this arduous contest, I can have no other object but to promote the true interests of all my subjects. No people ever enjoyed more happiness or lived under a milder government than those now revolted provinces. The improvements in every art of which they boast declaring, their numbers, their wealth, their strength by sea and land, which they think sufficient to enable them to make head against the whole power of the mother country, are irrefragable proofs of it, whatever irrefragable means. My desire is to restore them the blessings of law and liberty, equally enjoyed by every British subject, which they have fatally and desperately exchanged for all the calamities of war and the arbitrary tyranny of their chiefs.
Is he done yet? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Thank you, Heather and Finn and Louis. For those that want to see the original printing of the Declaration and of the Constitution, the museum will be open for 3, and in the Americana art galleries, they're on display there. And we thank the museum for making themselves open for this special occasion as well. So, and thank you all.